welcome to Hospitality Talks. My name is Sandra Fuentes. I'm the PR and Market Manager at Hosco, and I am thrilled to be your host today. I am sure we're all eager to know when will travel rebound. That's like the $1 million question, or actually I should say the $1 trillion question that we're all trying to get the answer for. But it's just, we don't know when. So that's why I have here with me today, well, here's all the way from Nashville, Tennessee in the US. I have Steve Hood, who is the Senior Vice President of STR, who in a few minutes will be telling us, sharing with us insightful data about what the predictions are for the summer. We will be also looking at what happened in Q1 2021. So, right, like 2 weeks ago, right? And some of you might recall, maybe you joined us at the beginning of the year, we had Steve sharing data and predictions for the first quarter of the year. And we're bringing here with us today because, of course, we want an update. We want to know what's going to happen in the summer, what's booking data telling us. What I can tell you from Hosco, from our own data, there is no secret, of course, that last year was a very hard one for everyone in the industry, everyone in the recruitment business, in the recruitment sector. So not only for hospitality, but in particular for hospitality. As you know, many countries went in lockdown, some countries are still in lockdown, going back to lockdown. And we saw, of course, a decrease in the number of jobs that we had published on our site. But right before the summer, we saw some increase, some light at the end of the tunnel, because many countries opened their doors. Many governments allow their citizens to move internally in the country. Here in Europe, the European countries opened, so we were allowed to travel internally across the region as well. But then after the summer, we got another wave of the pandemic, and some countries went back to, once again, to lockdown. So the last quarter of 2020, we saw a huge decrease in the number of jobs hospitality employers were posting. Then, beginning of this year, 2021, when the vaccination started rolling out, right? So when we got the news, I will say in November, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, back in November, that we have finally, some vaccines, right? So no need to name all the brands and all the ones that we have available right now. But that was very positive news, and that really helped with the amount of jobs, and I would say with the hope of many companies and employers to start hiring again, to start getting ready for the winter, for Easter. And so we saw numbers more than double on our site regarding the jobs that we had available. And right now, and then things decreased a little bit because some countries went back to lockdown. The UK, France, Spain were hard on some regulations, for example. But right now, it's different again. And the reason being is, of course, vaccination is going very fast, especially in some countries. We all know the case of Israel. We all know what's happening in the US. And of course, the UK. That reopened a couple of weeks ago. And so we're seeing, again, some job activation in the UK in particular, in France, although France is still, it's in a certain lockdown, and Dubai. And our guess is, it's because they're getting ready for the summer. We are all eager, not only as a job seeker, not only as a company, as an employer, as human beings, to travel again, to go to other countries or to even travel across our locally. So we're all very hopeful and waiting to be able to travel in the summer. That data that we're seeing, or that activity that we're seeing in terms of job postings on our site also matches our report that we publish every quarter called the Hospitality Pulse. That report shows us that employers hope, because we ask, when do you expect to reactivate hiring? And more than 40%, 41% to be precise, said that they hope to reactivate hiring by the end of June this year. So it's matching what we're seeing in terms of activity on our site. And we hope those numbers stay, and we hope that they go higher and higher. So before we jump into into the presentation that Steve, that you're all here for, to know when we'll travel reactivate. First, I want you to remind you that you have a Q&A box where you can leave of course, your questions. I'll be looking at them behind the scenes. The Q&A will be done at the end of the session. So during Steve's presentation, I won't intervene, and so just so you know, I'll be looking at the questions. I'll be picking the best ones for the end of the session. And also, before we begin, I want to know your opinions. We're going to run a quick poll. So to know, when do you think travel will reactivate, so that you can see if what you guess matches what Steve will share with us today. So here it is. I'm going to activate the poll. Okay. I'll give you a minute to vote. Tick tack, tick tack, tick tack. Let's see. This is interesting. Okay, you have 30 more seconds. If you haven't casted your vote, please do so now. Okay. You have 10 more seconds. Anyone joining last minute? Let's see. I still see some movement in the numbers, so I know there are still some people voting. Let's see. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm closing the poll. Let's see. Those are the results. So people are saying Q3 2021. 43% of our viewers right now, that's what they think. So let's see. Steve, I'll give you the room. Let's see if the numbers are correct. If people are correct, we hope so. Not many people are hopeful about, of course, Q2. We're at the beginning of Q2. We still have 2 months to go, so things can change. But everyone is hoping for a very good summer. So let's see. Okay.
Awesome. Xander, thank you so much, and what a great introduction. It's great to be here with you all, and wish it was in person, but it sounds like maybe it'll be in person soon, so that would be exciting too. So, but what a great introduction, and what a roller coaster that we're on. You know, it's like Xander was talking before. Is it lockdown 4.0 or 3.0 or 5.0? You know, depending upon where you are in the world, but glad to be able to bring you some data. Give you an idea of what, you know, our perspective on things, and we'll keep doing this and keep coming back, because a lot of the data we're looking at today is hot off the press even this morning, yesterday. So we're looking at exactly what's coming up, and as you all know, very dynamic industry right now. Things are going on everywhere, and just, you know, the Hong Kong Singapore bubble just got announced. The invitation of US vaccinated citizens to EU just got announced. I mean, both of those happened yesterday. So, you know, it is definitely a roller coaster, and things are going on a daily basis. So let me start by sharing my screen, and we'll jump in. We'll make this presentation. I think the webinar will be recorded, so we'll make this available to you, the recording, and then the PowerPoint would potentially be available as well if you'd like that. So anyway, had an intro. I'm Senior VP at STR, also director of a program called the Share Center. My email is there. And when will travel rebound? Most of you, I think, know STR well enough. This is just sort of STR by the numbers. If you have information, or if you have questions or need more information, let me know. And this is our Share Center program. This is our program for academic engagement. So if you are a professor, instructor, or student, we make a lot of resources available as well as this data. Don't hesitate to let me know if we can help. So professors, if you're interested in the data that I'm showing, we can make that kind of data available for you for research or for use in the classroom. So anyway, let's do an update. Here we are. We're starting at a very high level, global. Everybody, understands a lot of closures in 2020, continuing into 2021. You see the Europe wave 2 or 3, whichever, or 4, whichever one you want to you think of. But you do see in March we're starting slowly to come out of that.
Sorry for interrupting you, but we're seeing the slide in small size, so maybe you can increase it so it takes a full screen.
Okay, hold on. Thank you so much. That look better?
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. And oops, let me back up. Okay, closures, we're coming out of that. Okay, 2020, here's a quick recap. I won't spend too much time here because we're looking ahead, but this is just where we were in 2020. And what this shows you is full year 2020 occupancies in the dark green bubble compared to full year 2019 occupancies in the light green bubble. You can see major impacts, especially in Europe. Many of these areas where the 2020 occupancies were half what the 2019 occupancies were. That's 2020. RevPAR, remember that's, in the hotel industry professionals, a lot of times we'll look at the RevPAR because that's sort of more tied to profitability. Again, huge negative numbers in pretty much every region of the world. No surprises there. Global cities in 2020, very few in green, and these are color coded by the occupancy. Less than 25% is red. 26 to 50 is the yellow. So you can see most of these big cities hard hit. No surprise there as well. Now we looked at Q1. And we just finished Q1. So here I'm comparing the Q1 occupancy to the full year of 2020. And you can see some areas actually had improvement. If you look at, North America went up a point from 44 to 45. Latin America went up a couple points. Africa went up a couple points. Look at Mideast, 46 to 52, and Australia Oceania, 45 to 50. So, some of these areas had a slight increase in Q1. Some areas went the opposite direction. Look at Europe, from 33 down, no surprise, to 23 with, the extensive lockdowns in Europe, and same in China, 49 down to 46. So Q1, we didn't expect that to be stellar, and only small increases in areas, but decreases in many other areas. And here's the RevPAR comparison as well for you to, you can come back and look at that more, but that's sort of what's going on there as well. Q1 for those big cities. Now, this is interesting. You see real mixed results here because what do you see? You see a lot more in red. Look at London, Berlin, Paris, Rome, more of these big cities showing up in red, but you also see more in green. And in addition to Shanghai, Singapore, and Auckland, which we saw on the last slide, here now you see, others, Dubai coming up, and Miami and Moscow, and some, so it's definitely mixed results. You do see New Delhi and Mumbai, but as we know, that's gone down just recently. So Q1 is a little different than April. In May, April and May, yeah. So anyway, here's a look at the line graphs of these areas, and you see historic occupancy throughout the entire time period from February of 2020 up to just last week in April. And you can see China sort of led in the recovery, but then went through a wave 2, which was very serious in February. But notice China has rebounded pretty significantly. You see that in March, a little bit of a W effect, and now, but now China up to about 70% occupancy, pretty favorable. You see Mideast, doing real well. Now notice the little dip at the very end of the Mideast. That's the light sort of teal line. That's Ramadan. So don't be, the drop in the Mideast and Africa are both Ramadan. I've noted the highs before the Ramadan holiday. Remember that took effect April 13. You see the U.S. climb pretty well up to 57%. That's sort of the medium gray, and then you see other areas. And we'll drill down into a fair number of these areas now, starting with Europe. So Europe beginning to think about lifting lockdowns, and you can see the April data, and this is what I was saying, this is just from last week. We're beginning to see, at least a little bit of a positive direction in the occupancy in Europe. Here are sample countries for the whole time period, and we can see the countries had, differing effects. We see Russia sort of on the top. UK had been, it was on the top. It's interesting. Some of the countries like Germany had been on the top during the summer, but now near the bottom. Spain is sort of moving up. That was sort of interesting, and so you see a real mixed bag here among some of these sample countries in Europe. But if you look at March and April, you are beginning to see a little bit of positive direction, a bit of a dip in April, and then from that point, a little bit of a positive movement in most of these countries in Europe, which of course is good news. Now, this is just a recap. This is basically looking at Q1 from the last couple of years. No surprise, Q1 2021 is at the bottom. Q1 2020 had a couple good months in there. So, because think of it, this was, COVID was really just having an impact at the second half of March in 2020. So we're obviously at the bottom. Here's a comparison of March 2021, the dark green, versus March 2020. No surprise, March 2020 had at least a half a month of half decent data in there, and except for Italy, where Rome's was already feeling the impact in March of last year. So, but when you look ahead to April, and this is just preliminary data in April, what do we see? In the April 2021 is actually looking better than April 2020, because of course everybody, last year April was dismal in all of these countries. So beginning to see some, here's a little bit of a difference. Now this is our forward star data. One of the things we collect historic data, but then we also collect forward-looking data, and of course that's of interest in what we're talking about, because we're trying to figure out what's going on in the future. What this shows is occupancy for the next couple into the future for these various countries in Europe, and the green is the current occupancy on the books right now. Looking into the future, we're seeing, that's an increase. I could have shown you the data from last month, and those numbers were all single digits, dismal numbers. The blue is the pickup. Now that's the increase in occupancy between, the most recent time and just a little while ago, and so you're seeing positive signs here. You're seeing, occupancy, moving in the right direction, and you're seeing pickup. So that's basically new reservations would be what we're talking about there. So, some positive signs here. Look at data for the UK specifically. Obviously, you see, we've been in lockdown, and we're beginning to come out of that. Look at the surge in May. Now, these are, again, this is occupancy on the books. You do see that weekend trend. A whole lot of travel right now is on the weekends. It's a different type of travel than what we're used to. More domestic, less business. We'll come back to that in a minute. But you can see, just from the reservation data, the folks are getting ready to get out and see the world, just like that little picture. You love that, and so that's good signs. It's not, still a lot to come there, but we're seeing some positive signs. Now this is interesting. Look at Ireland. Ireland's betting that they're going to be open 2 to 3 weeks after the UK, and look at the pickup as we look at the data from Ireland, just to give you an idea. As soon as those signs and things begin to open up, boom, the travelers respond immediately, and that really points to the pent-up demand that everybody, everybody's locked in. They everybody can understand that people are ready to get out. So, and of course, we have some sporting events in Ireland coming up in June and July as well, which will be exciting, and people are already planning ahead for that. When we look ahead, here's some of the countries we've been talking about. UK, obviously, at the top of that list, and then Netherlands and Switzerland in terms of booking data, looking really strong there. This is forward-looking into June and July, and you begin to see some weekend activity. Now, the booking pace is much shorter than it had been in in the past. So people are responding very quickly, and as soon as they're getting word, they're making reservations. We have an indication, so that's good news. If you look at cities in Europe throughout the rest of the year, a lot of demand out there for future events. Look at some of the major cities and look at the spikes there. All those spikes are tied to major events. They could be conferences, like in November, you see the UN Climate Conference for Glasgow impacting Edinburgh as well. In Glasgow, reservations are 90%. Occupancy is 90% in November for that Glasgow climate conference. But notice Edinburgh is even impacted there as well. You have sporting events, you have entertainment, concerts and things like that. Lots of business on the books for these, and you can see the spikes really begin in June, jump up in July, rest of the year. Good news, of course, out there. Related to another thing related here, look at is related to vaccines. When those vaccines came out strong in March, look at the big jump in occupancy for different areas in Israel, all related to vaccinations, and that's pretty positive news there. Look at the jumps in April. Other little tidbits there, as I shared, and I think I shared a little bit about this before. Misconception to think that every destination in the world, every hotel in the world has been, doing awful during the pandemic. There are areas that have not been where that has not been the case. Look at Sochi, for example, in Russia, outperforming all these other markets, and so it's definitely a misconception to think that all the areas are doing bad. Here's an interesting slide that I loved. Amsterdam comparing hotels that were closed versus hotels that had closed at some point. Notice the ones that are opening throughout have a little bit of an occupancy premium over the ones that closed at some point in time. Interesting data. Asia Pac, let's jump in. Here are some sample countries in Asia Pac, and a lot of diverse scenarios in Asia Pac. You see the gray line, China, during the whole time period, recovered very strong, now back near the top there as well. We see the other bits of signs. Look at the orange line, Maldives. I mentioned last time, Maldives is unique because they did open up at the end of the year. And look what happened. They surged up to close to 80% occupancy when that government turned international travel back on. Now, that was a lot of end of year celebrations, but notice it has stayed high. I'll bring you up to speed on Maldives in a minute. You see Japan in there, and that's been a bit of a rocky road. Really good at the end of the year, but then, a lockdown 2.0, and that's sort of what's going on in Japan. You see India had been looking really good until April, and now has taken a dive there. Some of these other countries like Thailand and Vietnam have been near, these are countries that are obviously more reliant upon international travel, have been near the bottom. I purposely didn't put Singapore on here. Singapore actually is higher than China, but a lot of that's sort of tough to analyze because it's mostly quarantine government contract data. So if you'd like more data on any of these areas, don't hesitate to let me know. If you're an academic, we can share that with you. Some interesting things we're seeing here in China, for example. Look at how the higher end hotels have done in the last couple of weeks. A big surge when it comes to higher end hotels. Now, different than what we saw in 2020. In 2020, it was all the lower end hotels that were outperforming higher end hotels. So in China, we're beginning to see some changes, which is good news. Higher end hotels mean, more business and higher end group transient travel returning to China. Look at this. Here's another change. Tier 1 markets, the top couple markets in China, the top group of markets in China, where in 2020 we saw those top markets were underperforming. Now, more recently, in the last couple of weeks, this year, or at the end of the year even, we're seeing those tier 1 markets are coming back. So interesting shift in what's going on in China. I showed you this before, Sonia. These luxury leisure destinations were by far outperforming the rest of the country. Here's the Maldives, and just showing you coming out of the end of the year. The first line graph shows you still heavy occupancy in Maldives, around 60, sometimes up to 70%. And then look at forward-looking data in Maldives, still pretty robust. And so that's a great lesson. And obviously, a lot of other countries and resort destinations are looking at Maldives as an example here. Other examples of areas that have outperformed. Look at how Darwin has been off the charts in Australia. We see all these kinds of interesting things all over. Vacation destinations in Australia. This is seeing how they've done well. Look at this is an ADR slide, not an occupancy slide, but you can see big emphasis in Australia on domestic travel, and notice the ADRs have reflected that. Sydney surrounding and Gold Coast, look, they haven't been discounting. They've been prices compared to last year because of the demand for domestic travel. So those are all good signs. Business on the books for Australia and New Zealand. Look at some of the business on the books there. A lot of positive signs here. And keep in mind, this is good news as well in Asia Pac. There are still a lot of hotels that are under construction. These hotels, a lot of these projects have been postponed, but all of those yellow dots in India, China, Australia, New Zealand, all those different countries, those are all hotels that are under construction due to open in sometime in 2021 or 2022. So the good news is those projects have not been abandoned. The investors, the owners realize, hey, travel is going to be back, just need to be a little more patient. Quick look at Middle East, just to show you, these are some of these are those line graphs for the Middle East. We know that United Arab Emirates has been near the top there. Qatar has been near the top coming out of that. But interesting, when we look at just the last couple of weeks, we see a jump in Bahrain and a jump in Oman. And now of course, remember Ramadan has caused a downturn in just the last week of data. So that's a little fictitious. That'll come back. You just got to wait that out a little bit. Dubai, been strong there. You can see almost back to 2020. We talked about that before. And then, of course, Ramadan is having an impact here. This just compares Ramadan over the last couple of years for Dubai. And so that's going to be normal, and that'll come back in just a little bit. Central South America, just trying to give you some data around the world. Interesting, Brazil really hard hit here. And then the national lockdown, trailing Europe in April here, really feeling the pain here in a lot of these places in Latin America and Africa as well. Turning to North America, this is just showing some U.S. data, and if you notice, the last 6 weeks in the U.S. have all been above 50% occupancy. So those have been records. U.S. had not seen 50% occupancy since the first week of March. So U.S. is, that was a major bar to conquer, and for the last 5 weeks it has been above 50% occupancy. So definitely good. This is a long-term graph of occupancy and ADR percent change for the U.S. You can see the last two economic cycles in 2021, and then until the 9, and then of course the big deep cut in 2020. But this is running 12-month data, and you'll notice what you'll see. You'll see that data is actually beginning to recover. Now, the thing I think to emphasize here is look at that recovery. That is a sharp recovery, and so beginning to see some turnaround in that, and that's running 12-month data. Remember, that takes a little longer to catch up. Uh, this is RevPAR percent changes for the U.S. and the title here, it's only getting weirder. One of the weird things about this particular situation that we're in is, if you notice the RevPAR percent changes in everywhere, the U.S. is just an example. You're looking at RevPAR percent changes of like -80, -70, -60 for a couple of these months, and now, of course, we're in 2021 comparing to those bad numbers in 2020. So now the RevPAR percent changes will get, +60. I mean, I saw RevPAR percent changes of +200. So we're at STR, we're working on ways to help make more sense out of that, out of those weird numbers, to help people get a better idea of where they're really at and how the industry is doing. This is important to mention. It's just a U.S. example, but the same will hold true for all over the world. This is transient. One of the things we do is we separate hotel demand by group versus transient. So here you see a drop in transient demand. So now think of it. Transient is just the individual business traveler, you and me on a weekend getaway, domestic. Notice that drop in demand was -60, and a drop in ADR as well in the U.S. Look at the much drop in when it comes to group demand. Group demand down about -90 in the U.S. So no surprise, conferences, big events, way more impacted. And you can notice here that the transient demand you see is already starting to move back up. It's going to take longer for group. But we are seeing some return in group business, and these are, smaller events, a lot of weddings and stuff like that, which does get counted in that group business as well. And so things are beginning to turn around for transient. It'll take a little longer for group to turn around as well. This is what I was mentioned before. This is an interesting survey, just giving you an idea of that pent-up demand. Now, these are U.S. travelers. Looking at, and it's tracking the results over time. How willing will you be to do the following type? We see fly on a plane and take a trip and visit a casino and things like that. Look at how those numbers are going up. Now, of course, a lot of that's related to vaccination, and of course, but people are feeling more comfortable and safe and secure. Recovery will differ by types of demand. This just gives you a quick overview of that. We're already seeing signs in terms of leisure demand recovering, and then that'll transfer to business traveler and then to events and groups. We're already seeing domestic travel in many areas, and then of course that'll change to international travel. Just saw news this morning where the U.S. is trying to open up international travel by July. So having a plan in place for people to come back to the U.S. Starting July, specific procedures. As we shared, EU is inviting vaccinated U.S. travelers back to the EU, and so all that kind of stuff is going to have positive impacts on these particular areas. Here we go back to the China recovery. It was phased. As people look at China as a example, you can see throughout the year from March to October, and how that Chinese recovery took place gradually until it hit a peak in October, but of course then experienced wave 2.0, the second wave there in October. Here's just headlines and things like that we're seeing around the world, and again, a lot of people are describing this as sort of a ketchup bottle. You shake it and then eventually it explodes. Lot of positive signs all over when it or a lot of positive feeling all over when it comes to that. Business travel will take a little longer to recover, and this this slide is also from our we do our tourism forecasting with tourism economics. And notice here we're looking at business arrivals, leisure arrivals, comparing those two. Leisure arrivals are less impacted right now. You can see that in 2022, they almost go flat. 2023, the expectation is those will exceed. And then a little slower to catch up will be the business arrivals. So that's some data from that we do with tourism economics together. As we look ahead, we're expecting recovery, big signs in 2021, movement up. We did not, nobody expected Q1 was going to be good. A little improvement in Q2. Those numbers, we're 1 month into Q2, but then increasing, just as the poll described, Q3, Q4, where things will begin to really heat up and recover, and more vaccination availability, less restrictions availability, Q3, Q4. It'll take then time, group and events, the groups and meetings coming back in 2022. So more and more. Now, not saying that there won't be small meetings and events in Q3 and Q4 of 2021. We're already seeing that. Recovery will take time, and these just give you some sample countries around the world. This is just looking at demand, and we're seeing those coming back, some of those hitting prior year levels, and we're going back to most people, when they're looking at a baseline, they're talking about the demand of 2019. So we're seeing, some of these countries will be back by the, close to being back by the end of this year, and then coming back in 2022. But it'll be different. It'll be different in different areas of the world. This just shows, some major markets around the world, and how different things will be coming back at different points in time. Of course, Dubai is going to be impacted by the expo, and so that'll have a positive impact. Also, remember, when you're thinking about recovery, it's not just demand, but there are other metrics that have to be recovered as well. So that is a quick overview of what's going on around the world. Let us know if we can help you. If you're a student or a professor, we do have ways we can help you there, certifications. And then this is that, I think, a presentation that I mentioned earlier, Bright Spots in the Storm. Again, misconception to think every hotel did awful during the pandemic. That's not at all been the case, and there are lots of examples of that. Professors, if we can help you with this presentation, don't hesitate to let us know. So I'll close here just before we do our Q&A. My email's there if I can be of service to you. But that's sort of a quick update. Wanted to try to go through those slides real quick to allow plenty of time for Q&A, and I know we had a lot last time as well. So
we had all at the end. So people, it's time for you to ask your questions. What are you, any doubts you have with the presentation Steve just gave us? I already took note of some of them, some very specific ones, which I don't know if we'll have the answer for, because some of them, for example, we had someone asking about J1 visas, and that's out of the control, of course, out of our control. In data, booking data cannot tell us when J1 visas will be reactivated. That's something, of course, that only the US government will be able to answer you. And hopefully, we all hope that J1 visas, which is, of course, very important for hoteliers in the US, because they welcome people that are willing to do their internships there, are reactivated very soon. And I think with the vaccination, one thing we can all take out of this presentation is that the key to everything is vaccination. The fastest we all get the vaccine, the faster governments will open, the faster we will go back to normal, and hopefully to those 2019 record numbers that we had, right? So Yes, the slides will be provided. People are asking if you will get, if slides will be available. Yes, this session it's being recorded. In a week from now, you will have the video in your email, in your inbox. So check around a week from now. And also, Steve shared his email. He was very kind to share his email with everyone. We have hundreds of people connected, so that's very brave. Maybe you will get hundreds of emails as well. If you want more specific data, because we have people, for example, asking about the US market in particular for business travel. So I don't know if that's information you have, or maybe this person can email you later.
Yeah, yeah. And I see the questions here. Xander, do you want me to just take some of these questions in the Q&A? Yeah, yeah. I'll go sort of head from the top. In terms of the opportunities for investment, I think they're definitely out there. There are a lot of areas where there were a lot of hotels in the pipeline in various phases. And so you obviously have to be careful to determine, where are those opportunities. But I think, there are definitely investment opportunities. You just have to be really, really careful and to be sure that you've got the right location and nobody else is already trying to take advantage of that. So definitely think there are ones that are out there for sure. And I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned from COVID. If you think back to that bright spots we've seen things like weekend, we've seen smaller beach destinations and the popularity of those types of places. Look at Algarve and Algarve sort of outperformed a lot of Europe during the pandemic. You see outdoor tourism, and the popularity of outdoor tourism during this. So I think there are a lot of lessons to learn from COVID, and I think smart investors will begin to try to figure out, how do you capitalize upon that? Good question.
Yes, we just so because we're reading the question from the audience, is not someone asked about investing in the hotel industry, if it was the right time, a wise business move to invest. Okay.
Daniela, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Danielle was asking about big international hotel chains. Do you think adapted best? I think they've really all adapted. It's been interesting. I heard one of the CEOs talk about how they've adopted a war room mentality because they're realizing that things are changing so quickly. They're analyzing the data. They're seeing hotels that are doing, they're seeing trends that are happening, much more dynamically, and they're trying to apply, things that some of their portfolio are doing well to the rest of the portfolio, and hence a war room mentality where they get together on a weekly, on a real regular basis to look at data and try to capitalize on it. So I think they're all sort of doing a really good job. Helena, you were asking about results for Oceania, Australia, New Zealand. We have a huge amount of data. Now, some of that data, if you go to the STR website, you can access recent webinars related to these different areas. So you might be able to find that if you're an industry person, you might be able to find that on the STR website. If you're academic, let me know, and I can make more of that data available as well. And but that's a good question about Australia and New Zealand. J1, yeah. Is there any slides show business travel recovery, just focusing on the U.S. market? I mean, yeah. I mean, I think the slides that I had for group versus transient would probably be the best to show you that. Yeah, I think some of those slides sort of pointed to that. What about Mexico? I'm jumping ahead here, trying to get as many as I can. Slow me down if I need to, or if I miss one.
What about Mexico? We also have someone asking about cruise lines as well, if there is some insights about cruise lines that are picking up slowly.
Yeah, I think Mexico is an interesting example. I did see data on some of the resort destinations in Mexico, like Cancun and places like that. They were experiencing really good travel on the weekends. So, people were using those as weekend getaways. And of course, the flights there were open and economical. we definitely are seeing some good news there for Mexico, since there is no travel ban. And I think things are a little more liberal in Mexico right now than Caribbean.
In Europe as well. I mean, I know many friends, many people that have been to Mexico, because it's one of the few countries, and amazing countries, right? They have summer all year long where you can go right now. So yeah, for sure, they might have some better numbers than other countries, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Let's see.
Don't know about taking off masks. That's a good question.
Yeah, we have someone asking after your vaccine, can we take off masks? Well, we don't know.
Good for me.
That's something.
Yeah. Let them know I told you it was okay.
On science and governments.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's interesting. In the county that I live in, which is a little more rural, the mask mandate has been lifted, but nobody's obeying it. Everybody's still wearing masks, so it's sort of interesting.
Yeah, the combination between what government tells you you're allowed to take off your mask and how you feel about it. I mean, maybe it'll take some time for people to feel safe, even if you get a vaccine, you never know how you might react. We've been a year wearing masks, so.
Exactly. And now they're asking, now we're hearing news about boosters. When do you need a booster? And after you've been vaccinated. So, lots of things are going to, be coming up in the future. Vesna, thank you. Encouraging data, planning a follow-up session. We're definitely going to do that with Hosco, and it's been a great partnership. Love working with y'all, and we'd be more than glad to come back and continue to do follow-up as this progresses. Maybe on a quarterly basis.
And to get some more updates, as you can see, as you know, we did one at the beginning of the year. Now, because it's right before the summer, and because employers are getting ready for the summer. And so the next one maybe at the end of the summer, so we know how winter is looking and how the summer went. And hopefully we have very good summer. That's what we're all hoping for.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the Brexit impact. It's funny how some of these topics that people were thinking about in 2019 have sort of disappeared. Nobody asks about the Brexit impact. We did, we had some pretty good data and information about it, just like over tourism. Nobody's talking about over tourism in Barcelona or Venice anymore. It's interesting to see those kinds of topics that were hot topics in 2019 have sort of disappeared. But I might be able to find some data on there. Cruise lines, go ahead.
Someone was asking about the impact of Brexit. There would be some information about that. But as Steve said, I mean, it's a topic that was very hot last year. At the beginning of the year, and now the beginning of 2020, and now it's under the radar. But after all this pandemic is under control, we will talk about it again, I'm sure.
I just saw something on cruise lines come out. It might have been a Cornell webinar that was on cruise lines. If you want to drop me an email, Brittany, and if I can find that, I'll send it to you.
Brittany's asking, why are cruise lines slowly starting to pick up on business?
Yeah, and I'm not sure. If I can find that webinar on cruise lines, I'll be glad to send it to you, the link. Alexis was asking about Paris and booking window in the last few weeks. I noticed Paris was near the bottom of some of those big cities in the last couple weeks, and it didn't look like the booking window in Paris was very positive as well. But that's about as much as I know about that. I can get you in touch with somebody who might have a better perspective on Paris.
Yeah, I think for the next couple of weeks, I mean, Paris and France as a whole, it's still going through a tough phase. So yeah, I'm sure numbers might not be great at the moment, but maybe they will improve for the summer.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and that's, we were talking about that before, Xander and I, in terms of summer, with the EU opening up. We were joking about the fact
the US to Americans.
well, yeah, to Americans, but I mean, still, it's like, I booked a family vacation for my kids to Colorado. Now, Colorado is an outdoor destination in the US, so it's one of those hot destinations. And so, there were no discounts to be found, but it's a safer location. You can go hike in the woods kind of thing. And but no discounts to go for me as a US traveler to go to Colorado. And we were joking about the fact, Xander said I could get a flight to Europe for about the same price as I got the flight to go to Colorado. So, at some point, US travelers are going to realize, wait a minute, I can take my whole family to Europe instead of Colorado at the same price of going to Colorado. So,
yes, the question is, will those prices remain the same? And the information about the stories I was sharing with Steve before we started the webinar, I have a good friend of mine from Washington, D.C. traveling to Lisbon at the end of the month, the end of May, for, I think it was $350, $400 round trip. Another friend of mine is going from Barcelona to Chicago, where her family's based, and including a baby, she's paying $500 round trip in business, which is, I was so surprised. So will those prices stay? It will help tremendously, of course, for the hospitality industry on this side of the world, right? To travel for cheaper.
Exactly. And that's going to be the exciting thing we're going to see in Q3 and Q4, because that's really going to unfold big time in Q3 and Q4, and could cause that catch-up explosion in areas at that point in time as well. Christina was asking about Dubai, and Dubai's always been fascinating. I mean, the amount of development in Dubai in the last couple of years has been huge, of course. It was, a lot of that was in preparation for the expo. Then you postpone the expo for a year, and it keeps on going. And so, Dubai is just fascinating. And obviously, the government and the powers that be are trying to position Dubai as as the Mideast destination or the world destination for just about everything. And so it'll be really fascinating to watch. It is somewhat contrary to logic, and but there are a lot of things out there that are contrary to logic, and they just keep doing well. So interesting. Not real sure, Stefan, on the nomadic visa travel. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Nomadic visa travel?
Maybe like a working holiday visa when you can, but there's, I don't know, nomadic. I never heard that term for a visa before.
Sorry, if you can share more information, we'll come back to that. A student with the materials, we part of their Share Center program, we make these materials available to mainly professors. If you're a student and you'd like this, you can ask for the materials, but you have to CC a professor. It has to be for academic use. So if you're a student and your dad or mom own a hotel, that doesn't apply. But if you're a student working on a project, you can send me an email, you CC your professor, and we have to do it through the professor. So it has to be for academic use.
You can always send us an email at contact@hosco.com, and we will be happy to share that emails with you.
Exactly. Do you reckon that the business
model to enter the job market? Do you think a student of tourism will be able to enter the job market during the pandemic?
That's a good question. I think the answer is definitely yes. And I've been sharing that a lot with students. Definitely yes, but it's going to be different than what you expected. If you were thinking about going to a big city like Amsterdam at a big meeting and event hotel, that's not the right approach right now. You're going to have to figure out something else to get your foot in the door. Instead of Amsterdam, you may be going to a little bit more of an outdoor destination. Maybe start somewhere else, smaller city, smaller hotel perhaps, and it may be different. Or think of this. I know. When I talk to students, everybody wants a job at the luxury hotels. Well, those hotels have been most impacted by the pandemic. So you may need to rethink that. Think about starting out at a mid-scale or a lower end hotel. Now the good news is they're desperate. They're performing much better. You get a foot in the door there, you could grow, get promoted in the company much quicker in a lower end chain or lower end company, and then later in your career move to that luxury hotel that you always dreamed of. So
that we talked about in January, we had, as I said, a similar webinar, and it's about opening your mind to other opportunities. We know many students, I'm not going to name brands, that are dreaming about certain brands in the hospitality industry. But the most important thing is to start your career, even if you start a small hotel in your city, or in maybe, let's say, local in your country. It's just a reality right now. But the most important thing is to start. That's the most important thing. So don't let that stop you.
Exactly. Think long term. And when you're interviewing in one of these places, you want to say, hey, can I talk to somebody just like me from a year or 2 years ago and see what they're doing now? If they're doing the same thing that they got hired to do, 2 years ago, then you see what? Well, the promotion and the career advancement at a higher end hotel chain might not be the same at a lower end hotel chain. So talk to people in that company. This is obvious, but talk to people in that company that are just like you a year or two ago, and make sure that the career path is what you were hoping it was going to be. Sorry, didn't mean to give you career advice, but I talk to a lot of students.
Faraz is asking, do you reckon that the traditional business model of the hotel industry will revise from this point on?
That's a good question. A lot of discussion about that. Think about virtual events and meetings. Meeting and events are going to be majorly impacted. I don't see that there will be a conference in the near future that won't have a hybrid component. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages of that. That means less people actually have to travel to a city to attend a conference, but more people are going to be involved in the conference. I would think that, and I attend a lot of conferences. People are tired of seeing you and seeing me on the screen. They want to be face to face and in person. We want to go back to shaking hands, and depending upon where you're from, hugging people. Coffee break, wine break. I have a virtual happy hour next week. It's like, I've done enough virtual happy hours, thanks. And so I think we'll see long-term changes though. I think that hybrid would be great. But think of that. That's another opportunity for you. Meeting and events are going to be dramatically different in the future. I mean, I always brag on the Young Hotelier Summit group in Lausanne. They put on a great meeting normally, but in this hybrid situation, the students have done a fantastic job putting on a virtual meeting. So that might be a thing for you to think about. If you can get connected to a meeting and event organization that helps companies do that.
We're running out of time, so let's take just 2 more questions, and then, sorry, we will have to leave it here.
Understood. Stefan asked about data in Africa. Pretty slow. Things go slow moving in Africa right now. I think Africa is going to be behind the curve in terms of recovery, but it doesn't mean every area in Africa is going to be that way. Jules, we should have talked about that. Diana, a master's. Now that's an interesting opportunity. There are a fair number of schools that are seeing the current environment as an opportunity to launch a master's. So you might think, hey, maybe now if you thought about a master's at some point in the future, just a thought, you might jump into that now. And there are some schools that are doing, sort of alternative masters in light of the current. Morocco, I'm sorry, don't know that. Caribbean, I think about the same.
France in Morocco, and we're getting people asking for detailed information about their country, and we all know, of course, you want to know about your country in specific. Sorry we couldn't give you that information, but once again, you can explore STR's website to see more localized data. There are plenty of reports on their site that you can check.
Yeah, and you know, we were talking about job growth. One thing to leave you with, you know, and again, U.S. is a little bit different right now. I live in a city that is a smaller city. It's not a New York or a L.A. or a Miami. Huge demand. I mean, the city I lived in let go. Unfortunately, a lot of people in you know, middle of last year, they are desperate for people. I was in a webinar with a group from Hong Kong. I said, hey, you want to come to Nashville? I'll buy you dinner. And there are people who are desperate for good employees in Nashville. And I think we're going to see that kind of thing, you know, trickle all over the world in the very near future. So don't give it up at all.
Since it's already 6 p.m. over here, and yeah, let's leave with a very positive note. Same thing as a beginning, I started the webinar with, here at Hosco, we're seeing a peak, an increasement on jobs availability. So companies are getting ready for the summer. We're all hoping to see Q3 a big boost, right, and a big recovery. As Steve said, you know, things are changing every day. For example, yesterday with the news from the European Union saying we're welcoming all Americans with a vaccination in the summer, and the vaccination is rolling out very quickly in the USA. So we hope at least Europe, where I'm based in Barcelona, Spain, to see an increasement there. So that's in terms of job employment and recovery. So the numbers at least are getting higher every day. And at Hosco, what our mission is to make hospitality an exciting journey for everyone involved, for employers, for schools, of course, for talent, for job seekers. And that's why we're bringing experts like Steve, so we can share information, because at the end of the day, information is power, and the more you have, the better you can prepare for the future. So thank you once again, Steve. As many of you requested through the chat, we will have him again. We will inform you, so stay tuned to your email. If you haven't joined Hosco, please do so at hosco.com. And so that way you will find out when the next webinar with Steve would be. And let's see, you know, what happens this summer. And that's it for it. That's for everyone, for us. Oh my God, I'm just translating Spanish in my head as I speak. So thank you so much, everyone. And it's been wonderful. Steve, thank you once again. See you next time.
Best of luck, everyone.
Best of luck.